morning. We're really excited about the Rural Community Assets Fund and the opportunity to offer it to all of you. I do not expect this to go more than 45 minutes, if that. And you are welcome to ask questions. They can either be in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself at an appropriate time where you think that kind of interjecting would be fine. There are a number of things that, of course, you all may be thinking about that we may address later in the PowerPoint. So keeping that in mind, write down questions, and we'll also have several question breaks. So if you want to write those things down, we can always go back to what you had questions about. So a variety of different ways that you can engage as we move forward. So sort of what I was just mentioning about using the chat, also those question breaks, especially the recording and slides will be available early this afternoon. Please mute your phones when you are not speaking up. If you need to speak up, but keep your phones on mute. That would be really helpful. And really everything that we have that will be a resource for you all on RCAF is available on the website. I'm sure all of you went to that site to find some of this information, but this is always where it will be. So you will, or in your email when it comes to Blackbaud. So always reference that for the resources you need to apply if you choose to. So just real quickly, this grant is not through Volunteer Florida, which is the state's lead agency for volunteerism and national service, which is every state has a state service commission like ours, and we do national service like AmeriCorps. We do promotion and volunteerism, which is in my area. And then we also are the lead agency for volunteers and donations before, during, and after disaster. Now, the Volunteer Florida Foundation supports the work that we do through a number of programs like this. It houses the Florida Disaster Fund, and we are responsible for a number of the governor's special initiatives, and you can see those there. I do want to say that Hispanic Heritage Month is open, and it includes art for elementary school students, and middle and high school students, I believe, are the ones that write short essays, and they receive college scholarships. And then you can also nominate educators for that. So we have information online about that, but each of our special initiative months, we really want people to celebrate educators, students, and so on, of Hispanic, Black, or Native American heritage. Those are a few things for the foundation. So the actual grant, the goal here is for you all to generate volunteers to help achieve your mission. Very basically what it is, kind of wide ranging in that way, whether it's keeping your volunteers, actually recruiting them, getting them to do the work that's going to be most helpful for your organization. This is the core of what we want to do with this grant. And you'll notice here, we'll talk about it in a minute, but we're specifically talking about serving Floridians. And what we mean by that is serving individuals. So you are serving people when it comes to what is eligible for the fund. So collectively, we're hoping to give out 100 grand, between $5,000 and $10,000 is what you can ask for. And of course, we want to highlight that 100% cash or in-kind match or a combination are necessary for this. So organizational and training support, you all will receive that. In addition, of course, to the dollars to achieve the performance measures that you select. This is not cost reimbursement, and I think a lot of people appreciate that. So you will receive 50% at the beginning of the grant cycle, as well as 50% at mid-cycle. And we will have a number of trainings, coachings, other ways to support you. And we do expect for grantees or another relevant member of their organization to participate in that. So kinds of organizations eligible. This is something, again, you can go back and think through in your in the NOFA, the Notice of Funding Availability, but I'm sure all of you fit into one of these categories. Public, nonprofits would be any sort of government here. So any questions, of course, you can email rcaf@volunteerflorida.org about eligibility. And we have some information in the NOFA about individuals, organizations rather, that have fiscal agents. And those fiscal agents just must be in good standing and be eligible tax exempt organizations. That's not something that's frequent for people, but we do want to acknowledge that in case that's the structure of their organization. The Florida-based organization, you must have a service area in or volunteers deployed to an eligible rural area. We know in a lot of places that maybe one of the more populous counties is where the actual organization is, but then they also are serving in other areas or surrounding counties and so on. So we definitely want those entities to feel to be eligible for that. But the individuals served must be residing in one of the eligible rural areas. So if you are in a county or an area that is more populated, doesn't qualify for the eligible rural population eligibility qualification, you can do work. For example, your trainings are at your main office, you're doing recruiting in your main office area or in that that city. If all of that directly benefits and helps you to achieve your performance measures in that rural area, then that is just fine. And then of course in the NOFA we have a lot of detail about which of the counties and communities in the state are eligible. And there are many spaces in the state that would consider themselves rural, but we did need to use a very specific definition so that we could be equitable about who we chose, instead of having sort of an anecdotal way of choosing what rural areas were. All right, so this is where these are the things that if they do not happen, you will not be your application will not even be considered. So of course it's submission, waiting till the last minute. If you have technical problems and so on, you're not going to receive probably promptly the kind of information that you need to be successful. Of course, the Florida-based organization, the kind of organization that you are, you've got to be in good standing with the IRS. You've got to be mobilizing volunteers or will mobilize volunteers. If you are developing a new program or you've never had a volunteer program before, that's fine. Both of those are eligible realities, but if you have no plans on mobilizing volunteers, of course, that wouldn't, you wouldn't qualify. Got to select the performance measures. A lot of these are required if you actually go into the application. So you're not going to be able to move forward if not. But some of these, for example, your match and so on, that are in your narrative or in the actual budget template, those need to be very clear to us or we will not consider the application. Okay, so the focus again is being able to grow the mission of your organization or strengthen it by mobilizing, utilizing volunteers who serve individuals in your rural community. So for example, if your mission specifically has to do with animal welfare or the environment, the reality is the way that we've designed the fund this year, it means specifically that you are serving people. And then the 3 performance measures, you will be increasing the number of individuals served, types of services, or number of services provided to individuals. Now with this, you get to choose the target. So we want to increase the number of people served from 50 to 100, for example. And then an increase in the volunteers you've recruited and or retained. And then those volunteer management practices, which some of you may be familiar with, there's an upload on the website. You can look at that to kind of see which of these areas may be of interest for you to grow in. You only need to pick one, and you do not pick strategic planning to maximize volunteer impact because that will be something required. Now, you don't need to write a whole lot about this. This is just in general, we feel as though really getting a better understanding of how best to supervise and manage our volunteers, and here's why, that's going to be the kind of information that will be necessary in, I believe, the performance management narrative. But all of this information, again, you're just looking at the steps, is in the NOFA in terms of what we expect for you to share with us about which practice you would like to strengthen or increase. Okay, quick question break. Anybody want to unmute or anything in the chat? Otherwise, we'll keep rolling. Okay, great. So 3 performance measures you'll be indicating in the portal. All right, sorry about going back there. Right, so food, travel, not eligible for the budget. When we get to the budget template, please do not try to change, add tabs, edit in any way. The information needs to be within the budget template only. Cannot emphasize this enough. It's in the NOFA as well. If we can't find the information, then your scores will be affected significantly if you're not following those directions specifically. So, the purpose here again is capacity building activities to strengthen or develop volunteer programs in order to achieve your mission. So, of course, the dollars that you spend must directly contribute to those performance measures we talked about. And that you have chosen the one of the 3 in terms of number of individuals served, the ones in terms of growth in volunteer retention or new volunteers, and then the volunteer management practices, a number of which you get to select. But those things growing or being strengthened, the money has to directly be used for those things. So in the NOFA, there's a lot of explanation of the kind of what do you call it? Sorry about it. The line items that would be relevant under each of these. So I do just want to emphasize a couple of things here, and there's just a lot of detail again in the NOFA about it that you can look through. But with training, this needs to be specifically training for staff or for volunteers to achieve your mission and what you outline in your application that you want to use volunteers for. So everything needs to be aligned with that application narrative and what you want to accomplish based on what RCAF is expecting of grantees. So this is purchasing membership, subscription services, Volunteer Pro, which I'm not formally endorsing, but is has a volunteer management academy. There's other online opportunities for learning more about volunteer management. You may need to do some training with your volunteers or have materials that they need in order to do the work that they do well, serving your organization. So in terms of training, actually we'll go into that with the budget. So there are a number of different elements that you could be considering, and the budget sample actually has a couple of ideas for you. But training can be virtual or in person, as I mentioned before. No food would be included in this, and this has to directly support programming. So for digital resources, we know that sometimes that can be something that organizations they don't have, but Facebook ads, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, purchasing something like MailChimp or Constant Contact so that you can actually communicate with the individuals that you either are serving and your volunteers. We know that that can be really crucial to be able to communicate. Maybe it's something that helps you with texting. It automates your texting options or opportunities, or automates again with email. Those are the kinds of things that are great. Facebook has a number of different, there are a number of different websites rather that can help you calculate clicks and impressions, all those kinds of things when it comes to social media. If you, for example, wanted to have Facebook ads, so there's plenty you could look at online in terms of how to quantify and qualify that kind of information. Volunteer and promotional resources. Now, we want everything to connect to volunteers. So you can buy tablecloths and banners, items that will help you with recruitment. We want you to be explicit about why you need those items specifically for volunteer generation, connected to your mission and the program you want to grow, those performance measures that you have. So if you can articulate that, again, that those materials are being used repeatedly, you will be reporting on that information. You can project out those types of events or work that you want to do with those volunteer promotional resources. Vetting resources, so criminal background checks, you will be required, and we'll talk about it in a second, to run one no-cost background check. But if there's anything you're working with a school or whatever your mission is, if there are background checks required for volunteers, those need to be done, and you can use these dollars for that. All right. So, and hopefully this isn't too small, but there are some ideas here about what you may want to request. Of course, if it's very specific and coordinates with your application narrative. So trainers, how much costs to have that trainer? Now, if you have, a trainer costs $500 or I'm sorry, $1,000, you can work backwards from there to determine the unit cost and the number of individuals. So you've got 20 trainers, 20 volunteers who will participate in the training. So if you divide that 1,000 by 20, you're getting $50 per individual will be spent essentially on training. And then you determine how much you want your organization to contribute. And then, of course, if you subtract that out, that's the RCAF share. An example in kind would be an outside trainer who provided you a discounted rate. So typically it's $1,500, or typically it's, the $1,000, but you're getting a $400 discount. That counts as something that's in kind because that's been provided by your outside trainer. Or let's say another organization is partnering with you on the training because they also have volunteers, maybe not connected to RCAF, who are participating. That would be another example of in kind, or it may just be straight cash. All this will need to be explained in your budget narrative. Training specifically, if you see here, volunteering with children and youth, that could be through for your volunteers specifically, similar type of calculation. Now, I want to tell you with the template that there's wrapping of text, but if you don't see it, if you're looking in the entry bar, that's fine, because I'll be able to resize those things later. So just want to emphasize that that's okay if it doesn't look like it's present there, because it can be finicky that way. There are some national certifications for volunteer engagement leaders. You can see CCVA certification. That's kind of a clue for you all if you're not familiar with that. There's a textbook that goes along with it, continuing education programs, anything like that for your volunteers. And then that digital media information that I told you all about. You look here, unit cost for Facebook ad, and here's how many ads we want. You'll be describing and detailing that in your application narrative. But again, those are just some examples of how you can, of items that you can include, as well as how to detail them numerically. So this was the other section. STEM teaching kits for volunteers, reading and math materials, freestanding banners, again, resources, sorry, there's missing E there. resources that directly will contribute to what you've shared in your application narrative. Here are those background checks. So sorry about the.
I'm not sure I understand.
Oh gosh, sorry about that. Squished my my watch. Sorry about a couple of these spelling areas that said funger instead of finger there, but fingerprinting, background checks, whatever you might need to achieve the work that you'll be doing through volunteers to achieve your mission. And then these sections that I was just showing you, those you have to enter in. Unit cost, individual, RCAF grantee share. Where it calculates is here in the total column. So these will add together. This area here, the unit cost and the number of individuals, that adds up down here. You don't really use that. You would enter these in and the formula adds up RCAF and grantee share. So you'll see number of individuals listed here, but we're not doing this part for you. You need to multiply the 400 by the 2, divide it out, and then these two will calculate out to the 800. So not everything is a formula, and you'll see that here in just a second. So you'll see the budget amounts. If this were the case here, the RCAF grantee would not have enough of a match. There would still need to be at minimum 50% here. So we wouldn't include that as something that is eligible because you did not have the full half of the match. Your 100% and the RCAF 100%. So you'll see this information here for your actual sample. If you have any notes you want to share, you're welcome to here. Please round up to the nearest dollar. Anything that's 50 cents and above, include a 0 because we just want to make sure you didn't forget to put something in there. So that's important. So you see everything. You won't be able to add any rows, but I've given you plenty of them. If you have any questions or need that to be amended, let me know. But if somehow, yeah, I think you all will. It's pretty straightforward in that way. And then there are directions and clarification about it in the NOFA. Any questions at the moment? Okay, great. I think the main thing is going to end up being Blackbaud in just a few minutes. So we'll make sure to get to that. You all will be required.
I do have a question.
Oh, sure.
Okay, so it's back to that budget sheet. It showed that the organization given the money was less than 50%, and the where it says the 40.
Oh, you know what? I am so sorry.
So it's okay if that's the case, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
I am so sorry. Because I didn't have the columns here, I switched those around. Who was that speaking? Is that Joyce?
This is Eugenia.
Oh, Eugenia, thank you so much for catching that. So yes, the second column is the grantee column. And so this would be fine because half of that total amount, which was is the $11,000, is provided by the grantee. Just under 50% is provided by RCAF. Now keep in mind too that the 50-50 is of the total full amount that you all will be spending. So the match is still 100%. So you'll see the 5,800 and the 5,825, and then it adds up to the 11,625. So it's not that you have to have what you are requesting from us. It's that whatever you're requesting from us, minimally, you need to have exactly that amount or more that you are providing in kind or cash. Thank you so much, Eugenia. These cells are locked, by the way, so there shouldn't be anything that you can type in that needs to be preserved, whether it's the name here of one of the sections or the subtotal, any of the formulas and so on. Those you should not be able to enter anything for. If for some random reason you can leave it as it is so that everything calculates appropriately. All right, so we're going to keep going here. Reporting, background information, those things are just required. That is something that is expected of a grant. You will report on your performance measures, that we went over. You will have all requisite documentation for grant dollar use. So receipts, sign-in sheets, agendas, proof of the materials that you've purchased, the promotional items, and so on. And then, of course, proof of background checks. And that is something that will be really key. All right, so the timeline here. And again, it's on the NOFA, in the NOFA, also on the website. That most important date is Wednesday, September 20th at 5 p.m. If you have a question at 4:30 p.m. on Wednesday, September 20th, it is highly, highly unlikely that you will receive a response then, or even that day. A number of things typically come in. So please, please, at least start your application, get everything you need, make sure it's entered so you have plenty of time. You'll see that once we do that, most everything that comes after that is going to be internal, other than providing some clarification to applications that we expect will receive funding shy of that bit of clarification. So those are organizations that have gotten to a certain kind of scoring level, and we anticipate that they will be funded. We'll start with clarifications, and those will typically be very, very minor things. And then we will present that as a slate to the Volunteer Florida Foundation. We have a board of directors there. They need to approve it after we have taken care of all of the clarifications and presented the information that they need. If you were not selected, we will not provide that information until October 31st, as we will have other components of the application process to focus in on prior to that. Anita, that's a great question with volunteer appreciation. Yes, that can be something that is included as something as a volunteer resource, or something that may be promotional. The focus here, though, is really not wanting, I think if you spend $5,000 on plaques, then you let us know that, and you have an application narrative that is justifying that, then maybe that will be something that is funded. But in terms of everything that we are listing there, it behooves you to dig through the NOFA, make sure that, what you've shared there, technically it sounds like it could be something that is eligible, but really dig through the NOFA and see, based on what we're expecting, what the performance measures are, and how you explain and justify it, that it does align. And then, of course, when we do our review, ultimately that's when we would make that decision. So as much as I say I think that would work, there's still a number of layers to that that I wouldn't be able to formally speak to. As long as you are diligent about that, then we would look at how it aligns with our rubric, our matrix for making decisions. So any questions that you have? Some of you, I recognize your names. Unfortunately, you can't email me. And if I get something, I will kick it back to you so that you can, with this language in it. So we want to be extremely careful that there is no semblance of being inequitable in this process. That is how most grants, or all grants, should work, and certainly how they work for us in the foundation as well as in the commission. So please submit those if you need them. I'm trying to respond within about 24 hours to those. And I want to, before we go, of course, look at how we deal with Blackbaud. I'm going to show you. Let me know, how many of you all have used Blackbaud before? You can just put in the chat if you're familiar with it. Okay, maybe not. Okay, Holly, you have a few of you. Okay, all right. So it's often not might have long ago. It is not, it's not something that I certainly not something that I was familiar with. We've had a couple of different ways that we have conducted the grant process for applicants. So we use Blackbaud grant making. It's an online portal. And I believe you all can see the Adobe document right now. Can somebody just let me know in the chat? I always want to double check those things. Although I'm sure you all would let me know as well. Okay, I'm gonna assume you all can see it then. A quiz, perfect. This is going to be the first thing that you all see, and we'll go through some of this as well. But before you can even, and we'll make sure that you all see the links and so on. This is just the screenshots, but before you can even get into the application, we want to make sure that some of those key fatal criterion are answered. Now, once you respond, they're all yes or no. One of them is not applicable for the because of a government question there, but the prompt that you'll receive says you may not qualify. You are still able to go through the application process, but certainly if you go through it, you weren't eligible, then you put a lot of work in based on the eligibility criteria, the fatal criteria that we have in the NOFA, and are not going to be considered. So we want to be sure to put that in there, that that you can continue, but these are those questions we talked about that you need to be able to answer positively to. So that's the first thing that you'll see. You can still move forward, but this is eligibility. So here's what you get to next. Note that there is an application link, a main application link, and this is how you'll start. When you very first get to this application specific to us, if you have an existing username and password, great. If you're a former grantee of Volunteer Florida, you can just enter that information. You can do a forgot password. Otherwise, you're going to be creating a username and password. Be sure that if there's anything it says you need to check your email for, if you never get it, be sure to try again, check your spam, use a different browser, those kinds of basic troubleshooting things so that you get what you need quickly. You will, as I mentioned, you will have the eligibility quiz you saw, and here you go with all the key things we have to have from you. This is required information. It's pretty self-explanatory. Remember your employee identification number, your tax ID rather, for the organization. That should be 9 digits. Lots of detail here that we would want you to enter. Here, I have enter here. This is all going to be required. It says all information is required other than financial representative. At the very end of the application, which you can go back to an in progress application as many times as you want. It's a different link, so you need to keep that in mind. And that's in the NOFA, but at the very end, it will tell you everything that you still need to complete. So many times when you click next on a form, it won't let you move past it unless you fill out things that were not completed and were required. This does not do that. You're going to get it at the end. So try to be as thorough as you can so that you don't go back and realize your CEO title was missing, all of that. But the good thing about that is that even if that's the case, you see the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you can click on one of these and go directly back to that section. So you don't have to press back 97 times to get to where you need to be. Financial management, this is only if you have a fiscal agent situation, which I think most of you probably don't. Please keep in mind there are word limits. You can go in here before you've completed anything really and look at them, but we want you to be succinct about your application narrative, performance measures, budget, and so on. So, just create a little title. Be sure to enter the eligible counties or communities, because like I said, there are communities that are eligible that are not the full county. Your RCAF indicator, number of individuals you want to serve, types of services, and so on. You're going to select one of those. And then which of the management practices you would like to strengthen or increase. Got an application narrative here. You're doing an executive summary that is exactly what's listed here. It's really small. The same things in the NOFA, anything in brackets you fill out, but it is a basic statement that we need that's a good summary of what's to come. Your application narrative is 600 words. So you need to answer everything that's listed in the NOFA within that word limit. It will not let you go past that. Same thing with organizational capacity. We're looking at whether or not you will be able to successfully, based on the infrastructure of your organization, execute this grant and be a successful grantee. So you've got information here about what you need to include. You want to be sure that you're putting in your specific targets. Now, keep in mind and remember, not everything that you need to put in is listed here in the Blackbaud application. You've got to go back to the NOFA for what exactly you need to be entering. Your budget has to be connected specifically on that budget template. It must be .xlsx, not .xls, which is the 97-2003. It must be Excel. Okay, for submission, be careful. There's review and submit, and there's save and finish later. Two different things. If you, and I'm going to switch over, I know I said 10:45, so I'm going to try to finish this up. I want to be sure you have all of the correct information. We'll do a new share here after we move these over. Okay. Okay, so in the NOFA, I just want to go through this. So quickly with the applications, this is your application link for RCAF. It's going to show you specifically that it's RCAF. Of course, those things will be clear. There's instructions for new groups, existing groups that we've had worked with Volunteer Florida before or apply. If you need to return to an in-progress application, go to this link. Don't worry about that other link once you've done that. Otherwise, when you go to that first link, you're creating a new application. Now, your previous application will be there, but now you've got two kind of floating around in there. So you can still get to it. It just is kind of a hassle because now you'll have two, and you could just go directly to in progress there. So you'll log in, you'll do your eligibility quiz. This is just an overview of what you're going to be submitting, but above where it's got your application criteria in the pages above all the submission information, that's where you really know what you should include. So this is just the basics of what you will be doing. Note that after you click submit, you cannot enter, but you cannot enter back into the application, but you can begin that new application in the original Blackbaud application link. You need to email rcaf@volunteerflorida.org if you decide to do that. You can do that one time, okay? A third application is not going to be accepted. So us having to dig through that is a problem, but we do want to give you that one opportunity should you have accidentally clicked submit or want to re-examine what you have entered. Again, it will be new. It won't be us reactivating what you had. When you are going to submit, you can always print the application. You will get a copy of it in your email. I strongly suggest copying, saving as much as you can. Blackbaud offers the opportunity for you to print your screens. If you're not writing this in Word or some other application, then please do that, because if you are writing directly in Blackbaud and something happens and you haven't saved it, you've lost that wording, those calculations, and so on. And I'm sure plenty of you are understand that. So as I was mentioning before about the criteria, this is the detail that you all should be answering. So organizational capacity is not about what you think it is about these very specific things. And similarly with the ask about volunteer recognition resources, when you look at all these things, as well as the NOFA and what our expectations are, really examining whether or not those things would, how that connects to retention. You've seen that in the past. Very specific about those things would be how you would be able to justify that, as we were chatting about before. So in terms of when your program starts, I think this is one last appropriate thing to discuss. If your volunteer program is next summer, that's fine. Or of course, contracts are not going to go out into November, so it's probably not going to be something in this fall. That's fine. If you have a summer program, as long as it's before the contract year ends, and that's when you're going to use the dollars and achieve what you have explained in your application narrative, that is fine. So keep that in mind. That's really key, that it doesn't have to start in January. We don't have that requirement. If you have a 6-month program and it goes from March to whatever 6 months after March is September, that's fine. So keep that in mind. Don't push yourself for something to begin in January if that's not when you're ready, or that's not when recruitment you're able to begin recruitment. We want you to maximize the use of these funds and be able to hit those performance measures and achieve what you have listed in your application narrative. So please keep that in mind. I think that is something that a lot of people already may have in their brains. Other last minute thing, you do not have to request dollars in all of the 4 budget categories. All your dollars could be focused on training if you wanted to do that, if that's what you feel like the need is, and so on. So those are a couple of the key things that I wanted to share with you. If you have questions, what is a higher education entity? That includes technical colleges. It can include, career colleges, apprenticeships, those kinds of things that may not feel clear, or you want to make sure you have more of a definition. Please email. We will not give you a yes, no, this is fine, or guide you through the application in terms of your content, because that would not be equitable. But certainly technical questions that you might have using Blackbaud, clarifying things in the NOFA, that would be fine. So any other questions at the moment about the grant? Just going back to this real quick.
I have a question.
Sure.
And I may have overlooked this, so forgive me if I did. Can an organization complete more than one application if they're serving different areas?
So you would complete one application for the collective areas that you're serving. So if you have 3 counties around you that you're serving, the organization would complete one application and provide information about those sites and the work that they'll be doing.
So only one application per organization?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great question. Anyone else? Thank you, Eugenia. You've had several things that I will want to make sure that people have questions. Thank you for making sure that those were answered.
I have a question.
Sure.
My name is Robin, and I'm representing the CDC and STEM exposure. So my question is related to Eugenia's question. So I have another nonprofit that's on the line as well, and we partnered together. So can I include her in my grant, and then can she apply for her a grant on her own? Would that be permissible?
any individual organization can apply for the dollars. The money that you are sharing in kind cash / RCAF share, the in kind can be from another organization, however you want to clarify that you're receiving that money from outside support. Now, the reality is, if you have a partner organization and your grantee match is assuming that they are going to get RCAF as well, that would be a problem because those aren't secured funds. You know, if you were trying to overlay her grantee share with your grantee share, because you don't know that you're getting those funds. But if you are separate entities and you have great work that you're doing, you complete the narratives appropriately. If you happen to have a partnership, but each of your applications is clearly indicative of individual organizations, then you can both apply. But of course, you just need to be sure everything in the NOFA is addressed and not with the presumption that the other is receiving the funds.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Another great question. Okay, well, this will be included on the website in a few hours. I've got to cut out the beginning of the recording. I always start right when I get on, just to be sure I don't forget to record when I start, but I'll chop that off and our IT person will be sure to post this as well as the PowerPoint slides. Let's see, someone had a question? Holly.
Yes, I did. I just wanted to ask if the actual volunteer hours, in the project could be counted towards the in-kind match or not.
So the presumed, I may need to think about this for a second. My initial answer is no, that the in-kind is not something that's within the grant, because that is like a circular reference there. If you have other programs where volunteers are serving, that may be something that is valid, but using that within, it would sort of be like using the dollars you receive for RCAF for grantee dollars. So my initial response is no, but I will be sure to double check that. And I may start a kind of parking lot of questions on the website as well, because some of these are really helpful and I think everyone would benefit. But I'll be sure, Holly, that I connect with you specifically. Can you put your email? Actually, email rcaf@volunteerflorida.org so I have your email address.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Okay, so recording as well as slides will be available soon. Please contact me. I am behind RCAF@volunteerflorida.org. Jovita Woodrich. I'm the Volunteer Services Director. I don't even think I introduced myself beforehand. Thank you all. I know we're a little bit over, but you all had great questions, and I think we covered a good bit of information that hopefully will help you either decide whether you want to apply for RCAF or help you along in the process. So look forward to hopefully seeing applications from you all. And in general, I hope that you're aware of, through our newsletters and our website, the opportunities and resources that we have, whether it's our training, recordings of volunteer management trainings. We've got plenty available that we hope we can provide to the field and national service, emergency management, and volunteerism. So thank you all so much. Email if you have questions, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. Take care.